Hey guys, it's Julian from Beneath the Bunk Studios and BeneathTheBunk.com. I hope you're doing wonderfully today. We are discussing 10 features and keyboard shortcuts inside of Pro Tools that I think every Pro Tools user should know. Let's get into it. Right in front of me, obviously, I have a blank Pro Tools session. I tried to get a pretty good mix of beginner shortcuts and intermediate and advanced shortcuts in this video. I'm going to do multiple parts, so if you're looking for some more advanced kinds of things and I don't say enough for you in this one, then subscribe and check out the other editions of this video that I will definitely be doing, and maybe I'll show you some stuff that you didn't know. So to start off, we have Control-Shift-N, and that's one that everybody knows. It's really nothing special, super beginner level stuff. However, another one that I really like to use when I'm in this new tracks window is Control or Command left, right, and up and down. What you'll notice when I do Control left and right is that I'm alternating between mono and stereo. And then when I do Control or Command up and down, I'm alternating between the type of track. And then eventually when you go down far enough, you start seeing different track presets, both ones that you've created and ones that come stock in Pro Tools. And if you navigate to one of the track preset menus, or categories rather, and then you do Control Alt up and down, you start to navigate between the more specific presets, and then if you press enter, you create that preset. I love how fast those shortcuts make everything, because it allows you to just make, like, say I wanted a stereo aux track, for example, I could just go and I got a stereo aux track that fast in 0.2 seconds. Whereas if you didn't do that, you would have to go up here, new, stereo aux, and that's fine. It's not really that slow in the grand scheme of things, but if you're doing that action a lot of times, the way that I just showed you is obviously much faster. The next keyboard shortcut that I really love using in Pro Tools is Alt or Option Shift 3. And what that allows you to do is to consolidate two clips together, whether they're audio or MIDI, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to highlight both of these by pressing Shift and clicking, and then I'm going to do Alt or Option Shift 3, and they're going to become one. And then you can extend this out. This comes in handy in particular when you're working on a song and you're arranging something. So for example, let's say this 4-bar part is a whole chorus. Obviously it's not, because it's only 4 bars, but let's pretend it is. Now I can just hold Alt and drag, and then, you know, I could bring it over to another chorus, for example. I don't have to worry about having two different events because everything is connected. Another shortcut I really like is Control or Command left and right to go between track names when you're naming tracks. So for example, let's say I want to rename Audio 2 to drums. And then I want to name the next one guitar. Obviously there's no audio on it, we're pretending there is. So I would normally maybe press OK after naming the one drums, and then go here and name this one guitar. Instead of doing that, what you could do is name this one drums, and then do Control or Command right arrow, and then you could do guitar, and then you could do Control or Command right arrow, and then do bass, vocals, you know, special effects, whatever kind of stuff you're adding on to your track. It helps you name tracks much faster when batch rename, for example, is not helping you out when you're doing something that batch rename can't help you with, if you're familiar with batch rename, that is. Another Pro Tools shortcut that I use a lot, especially when I'm editing, actually I mostly only use it when I'm editing, is Tab to Transient. In order for you to use this, keep in mind that you have to have this up here enabled. The Tab to Transients button has to be blue, indicating that it is enabled. And then what that allows you to do is select your mouse on a track and then press Tab, and then your your cursor will navigate to the next transient. It's not perfect all the time, but for things like drums, where the transient is very distinctive, and guitar DIs, where they're usually very distinct transients, it works like a charm. So what this allows you to do is, say this was slightly off the grid, like I want the snare to be right on the 3 here, but it's a little bit late. What I could do is start my cursor over here, press Tab, press B to break that up, and then slip it right over, make it a little bit smoother, add a crossfade later once I do all my edits, and then that's it. Tab to Transient, awesome. Let's move on. This next one is one of my favorites, and it's one that I hear talked about the least, I would say, and that is assigning cascading inputs. I don't know if that's the actual name for it, but that's a name that makes sense to me, so that's what I'm calling it. So let's say you have a drum sampler like Superior Drummer or GGD, and you want to route all of your drum outputs to an individual instrument track in Pro Tools. The ordinary way you would do that is go into the inputs, go over to plugin, go to Superior Drummer 3, and then click the input that you want, and then repeat this process for each track and just keep going down that way. Instead of doing that, what I would suggest you do is highlight all the ones that you want the inputs to get changed on. Hold Control or Command and Alt or Option and Shift, and then go to the input on the first track. Go to Plugin, Superior Drummer, and start with the first output in Superior Drummer. So in this instance, it's 3 and 4. So I'm going to click that. And then just like that, you get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. You don't have to go every individual track and waste a bunch of time doing that same tedious task over and over again. Super fast, Control Alt Shift or Command Option Shift, and you're ready to go. Next on the list, I have no idea what number we're at, is holding Alt while changing parameters such as track view, automation mode, inserts, sends, inputs, and outputs. So let's say I want a trim plugin on every single one of these tracks in this session. What I can do is I can hold Alt and I can press the first insert slot and then release Alt and then type in trim, enter, and then every single track in the session now has a trim plugin on it. The same thing applies for send. So let's say I wanted to send every single one of these tracks to my drum sum, for example. I would just hold Alt, click on the send, and then type in dsum, because that's what I have my drum sum named. Press enter, and then every single one is getting sent to my dsum. And the same follows with inputs and outputs. If I hold Alt, click on an input or an output, it's going to send every single one of my tracks or receive every single one of my tracks from the same input or output. And then if I want to see, any kind of clip view on every single one of my tracks, I could hold Alt, click the clip view selector, and then the track view selector rather, and then find the one I want, and then every single one is going to get changed. Alternatively, let's say I only wanted trim plugins on these 2 tracks, but not the rest of the tracks. I could hold Alt Shift or Option Shift, click the insert slot that I want the trim plugin to be on, release Alt and Shift, and then type in trim, and then get that only on those 2 tracks. So Alt and Shift is going to apply the changes that you make only to the tracks that are highlighted, while Alt is going to apply the changes to every single track in your session. So this next one is not a keyboard shortcut. It is a feature of Pro Tools, and it is called commit. So let's say I have a synth part here. I just programmed a random note from Serum, and it sounds like this. And for whatever reason, I want to bounce that down to audio, so maybe I could send it to a mix engineer, or I could send it to somebody who doesn't have Serum, but I want them to still have that sound. What I can do is select the region, right-click on the track name, go down to commit, and then select edit selection or selected tracks. I like doing edit selection because it's telling the computer exactly what part of the track you want to render. It's not just going to render the entire thing. And then you could do consolidate clips if you want everything to get consolidated, but if you don't, leave that off and it'll leave it in separate regions. The rest of these settings I usually just leave default. I do nothing on source tracks. Insert after selected track I will usually have on actually, and then offline will stay on so that it doesn't have to bounce in real time. And then I press OK. And then just like that, I have exactly what you just heard in audio form. So I'm free to make changes easier. So let's say maybe I want a stutter effect. Now I have this. The next and final Pro Tools feature that I think every Pro Tools user should know is solo safe. This is a super important one, especially when you're doing lots of routing, lots of bussing, and any kinds of effect sends and blah, 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 blah. Here I have the synth note from the other example that just sounds like this. And what I'm doing is I'm routing this synth track to a stereo aux on this track. And as you could see, it's working properly because when I play the synth, the level of the audio is coming through the aux. However, let's say that for some reason while I'm mixing, I want to solo this track and I just want to hear the synth on its own. So I'm going to solo it and then I'm going to play it. So solo and then play. We hear nothing. Why is that? It's because you're soloing the track, and by doing that, you're also muting the aux that you just created that the synth is routed to. Why is that happening? Because you're pressing solo. Solo means I want to hear this and nothing else. Unfortunately, Pro Tools isn't smart enough to say, okay, so since he's soloing this, he must want to hear what it sounds like, so maybe we should also solo the aux that it's getting routed to, like Cubase does, for example. No, it's not smart enough to say that to itself, and instead what you have to do is press Control or Command, hold that down on your keyboard, and then click the solo button on the aux that you're working with, and this will also work on instrument tracks or audio tracks or anything for any purpose. The bottom line is now, if I solo this instrument track, and then I press play, I still hear it coming through the aux now, because it's solo saved. That's telling the computer, okay, I want this track to always be able to be heard. It's never going to not be heard, so just keep it on at all times so that when I solo anything that's getting routed to it, it'll play. All right, guys, that's all I got for today. I really hope you enjoyed this one. If you did or if you didn't, let me know down below. If you have any questions and you're confused about anything, don't be shy. Let me know down below. There's a 100% chance I will answer you at some point. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I am going to be doing a few more parts to this video, so other keyboard shortcuts and features in Pro Tools that I think are really important. So if you want to be on board for that, if you want to check that out, please hit the like and subscribe button down below, and I will see you next time.